Welcome back to the Small Group Podcast. Thank you guys for joining us again. Hopefully, if you hadn't caught our first episode yet, I am Ben with my wonderful wife, Lacey.
Hello.
Good to have you here at our home. We are joined with a wonderful couple, a duo, dynamic duo. Why dynamic duo?
I thought you were thinking of our names.
Jeff and
Sally.
Jeff and Sally.
No, Sabrina. Hey, everyone.
I'm Taylor.
Formerly known as Jeff. Sabrina, formerly known as... Wow, I just forgot the name you made up.
Okay, so quick aside as we're doing this intro. Andre and Jasmine, shout outs, who go to our church, recently, in the last few months, found out that my legal first name is Robert.
Oh, boy.
Freaked them out. They were like, wait, you've been lying to us this whole time.
Hang on. We just found out your legal name is Robert.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Mic drop, I
His
guess.
name is Robert.
Hi, Bob.
Oh,
Bob
Hi.
and Sabrina.
so
Good to have y'all here.
you can call me Bob if you want, I guess.
No.
Don't do that. My dad is Bob. There's a bunch of Roberts in my family. Shout outs to my dad. Hello, Dad.
Sid's first name
Is also Robert.
Robert Sidney Bain.
And his father's first name was Robert Taylor.
Mr. Bob is my father
That's right. Mr. Bob was my father, literally.
and
But,
grandfather and great-grandfather.
yeah. No Jeff in there, but yeah, I'm Taylor.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I'm
I
like,
feel like Sid shocked you more than Taylor.
Yeah.
yes.
Robert Sidney Sr., my grandfather.
It never dawned on me to ask, hey, Sid, is that your name?
Right.
And can you guess what Sid's dad's name was?
I'm guessing Robert.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. There's a bunch of Roberts.
I love it.
So
Is Sid short for Sydney?
Yeah.
Robert Sidney?
Robert Sidney Bain Sr.
What a-
Yep.
What a prestigious name. By the way, we're talking about Taylor's grandparents. Those of you that have just met us, or all four of us, hopefully for the second time. That brings up something else that you and I have been talking about doing.
Oh, yeah.
Another project that we're going to be doing soon, hopefully. This is the gateway to that. A project called Profiles in Faith, where I'm calling it, we interview the more seasoned people that we know. Your grandparents have been very important to Lacey and me. Your grandparents, Sid, your grandfather Sid, and your grandmother Miss Betty. I can't just call her Betty. Miss Betty.
I call it Gran.
Aw.
Me too,
Gran.
actually.
They were our
I can't
very
be that
first
irreverent.
friends at Palo Alto, and we adore them. We really
Yeah.
do.
They love y'all. We talk frequently with them. We meet with them.
Well, and it's funny because
And they
before
talk
we
about you.
ever really got to know you, they talked so highly of you both.
Yeah.
They said, oh, you'd be good friends with Ben and Lacey. They're so smart. And
So they said the same thing to us about y'all. They were
Aw.
like, right when y'all were moving into town, she was like, I
Aw.
really want y'all to be friends. So
Yeah.
I think this
Not-
is like a beautiful backdrop of like what happens in church communities.
yeah.
Which just to as like an overview for the people who may be listening who like don't know my grandparents, like
Everybody knows your
everyone
grandparents.
knows, but like they just like help set the stage in so many ways for us being at this table tonight, and we are just we're again just grateful to be here, excited about episode 2, thankful to be learning more about one another and shouting out people who we love. So
We, the four of us, like as far as couples go, we've felt kind of a natural connection with you guys.
likewise.
Yeah, so I consider us very good friends at this point, and so not to underwrite any of that, but Lacey's downplaying the pressure Miss Betty put on us. You be friends with them. She was very determined but she was right. I mean, because I feel like we're all peas in a pod here in small group, but
That doesn't surprise me. She can be very direct.
oh boy, do I know. I won't tell that story. She
Story for another day.
I really saw my life flash before my eyes. But anyway,
He found out the hard way. Don't make Miss Betty mad. Don't do it.
see, being her grandson, I feel like I don't know. I've never seen like that full aspect of. uh, She's a lovely, amazing human to me who just has all of the great grandmother qualities and just is so amazing. I know that she can be spicy in her own way. I love you, Grandma.
I agree with that sentiment totally and completely, with one caveat. And we went to dinner. I won't tell. Well, I'll just briefly. We went to dinner. Lacey apparently already made an agreement with Miss Betty that they were going to pay or split the ticket or something like that. Well, Lacey, when Lacey went to the restroom when the bill came out, and I'm sitting there with Sid, me and Sid have just been talking this whole time. It's been great, and I grabbed the check and I paid for it, and Miss Betty finally realized. She's like, "Did you pay for supper?" Yeah. You shouldn't have done that. We had an agreement, and it's like I love Miss Betty. I don't want this to. She is the sweetest, kindest thing, but the best thing I can liken it to is Lord of the Rings. When he makes that face and reaches for the ring in the first movie. Oh, Bilbo, right? Bilbo reaches and his whole face distorts.
Oh yeah.
I was literally scared. I mean, shaking scared.
Yeah.
And because I thought at first, she's just, joking, whatever. But it's like, no, I really messed up. But this also speaks to the sweet, kind-hearted lady that she is. She, because I think it was a Friday or Saturday night, she came to me Sunday morning. She said, I felt so terrible. I overreacted. I'm so sorry. But you can't erase that image of Bilbo attacking you over the ring. It's there.
At
but
90 years old, she still can just turn it on you. You want to stay in that.
I will never cross that woman.
Yeah, you want to stay in her good graces.
Absolutely.
And you want her praying for you, by the way.
Yes.
I love those people.
I'm fully convinced that without the prayers of the Jubilee generation, as we might call them, that things would fall apart pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I really think so. So
you and I had this conversation recently about, I love that verse where you never know when you're entertaining angels. So be hospitable to everyone, and I can, up until that Bilbo moment, I considered but maybe that's, anyway, I'm on thin ice as it is. All that to say is, stay tuned. We've got other projects in the works. One being Profiles in Faith.
Yeah.
Talking about our, people that we really look up to and just to hear their full story. Every congregation that you are part of or any kind of group, you have those very pivotal people, influential people, but very rarely do you really get to grasp their full story of what made them them. A little nervous in a way of, don't want to see how sausage gets made kind of thing. But at the same time, I'm dying to know the story behind some of these folks. But anyway, that's coming. Like last time, if you have any questions that you want us to answer or talk about, or any questions that you just have that you're looking for an answer, and we don't necessarily have to discuss it on the air, send us a message. You can email us at GOAT.bear, BEAR, .lobster, LOBSTER, at gmail.com. And we'll just let us know if you want to be anonymous, want to be on the air, not on the air, or discuss the answer, whatever. Just give us the rules and we'll discuss it off there, give you an answer, or we'll talk about it here. Anyway, we appreciate you joining us tonight. We're going to continue kind of where we left off last episode. We start off kind of a little icebreaker questions in a way that really ended up being more than that. I hope it revealed, without us just being completely blunt and straightforward about who we are. We'll get, like I said last time, we'll give some more. Each person's going to get an episode soon. We're devoted to their whole testimony, kind of a mini Profiles in Faith kind of thing. But I hope some of these questions have been a little bit revealing to let you kind of get to know us, who we are, and kind of where we're going. And later on in this episode, we'll talk more about where we're going with later episodes. But to start us off tonight, that's right. Our question is, well, if I can find it, I'm looking for it. Well, basically, we're talking about our favorite stories in the Bible. Last time we talked about favorite verses, favorite books, even those books that we find very challenging. Tonight, we're just going to back out a little bit and talk about stories, those pivotal moments in the Bible that mean so much to us. And I won't bogart the session tonight. So whoever wants to jump in, and I think Sabrina's chomping at the bit. Do we want to start with Sabrina? Or okay?
I was hoping to hear from Lacey first, but I'll go, and then maybe Lacey can go after me. But so this question, I feel like in this moment, the story that stands out to me most is in the book of John. We were recently actually at Sid and Betty's, Taylor's grandparents, this week, and we were reading from John, and we read from chapter 21. And I am an emotional person, but I don't like being emotional in front of people. And this verse just kind of hit me emotionally in a surprising way. It hasn't in the past, and so I was really surprised by it. But I'll just go ahead and read it.
Real quick, I'm sorry. What was it? What was the book?
Yeah, it's John chapter 21, and the verses are 15 through 17. So just 3 verses. And the title, that's at least in the NASB 2020 version, is
Team
The Love
NASB.
Question. And so it says, "Now when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, 'Simon, son of God, do you love me more than these?' He said to him, 'Yes, Lord, you know that I love you.' He said to him, 'Tend my lambs.' He said to him again a second time, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me?' He said to him, 'Yes, Lord, you know that I love you.' He said to him, 'Shepherd my sheep.' He said to him the third time, 'Simon, son of God, John, do you love me?' Peter was hurt because he said to him the third time, 'Do you love me?' And he said to him, 'Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you.' Jesus said to him, 'Tend my sheep.'" And obviously, there is a pattern with asking Simon Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" and Peter denying Christ 3 times. And it just hit me pretty strongly because in pretty direct ways and indirect ways, I feel like I've failed Christ so much, like I've let him down. And I think it just shows God's grace. Like he's showing a lot of mercy to Peter in this moment, giving him the opportunity to redeem himself by expressing his love for Jesus 3 times after, not long ago, Peter denied him 3 times. And so I think just like when you're thinking about the character of God, this story just reveals a really beautiful piece of God's character.
Such a great moment. I could definitely see how that is. You get emotional from that. I can definitely feel. I get what you're saying. There's like a sense of like the grace, showing the grace of God. That's absolutely. I also feel like a sense of relief on Peter's part because you can imagine the struggle. He was so sure. When Christ said, "You'll deny me," he said, "No, I won't. Like I am committed. I'm loyal." And he's the one that drew his sword, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of interesting because I think for me, at least, when I'm learning about all of the disciples, Peter would be the last person, if I didn't know the story, he'd be the last person that I would think would deny him 3 times because he has this very intense loyalty. Like if we're thinking about the Enneagram, and this isn't, biblical, but if I'm thinking about the Enneagram, Peter in my mind is an 8.
That's a good That's a good account. Yeah, and I can't kind of go on extra biblical like you're talking about with the Enneagram. I also think because this will play a part in my story as well that I picked, but I can't. I kind of imagine Peter almost. It doesn't say this, but after that third time, you almost feel like Peter recognizes it, And then somebody's like, I can almost feel the tears come to his eyes
Yeah.
or follow his face kind of thing. One little trivia point that I came across with this story, I'm not really quite sure what to make of it just yet, but I'll throw it out there as far as something to think about and consider. So when he says, in Greek, love, at least the meaningful love, when God is love, when Paul talks about what love is, it's patient, it's kind, and all that. It's always, in that sense, agape. I think most of us by now hear, there's many words in Greek of different types of love: phileo love, Philadelphia love, brotherly love. Here, when Jesus asks him, I think it's one of the two. I'm going to misremember this. So he asks 3 times, Peter, do you love me? It's either the first time he says agape. Well, he doesn't. He's speaking of Aramaic. That's one thing I have to remind myself the context. He's speaking Aramaic. John's account in Greek. The first question, he either says agape, and then the next 2 he says phileo instead, or vice versa. I can't remember. But anyway, so he uses 2 words for love there, agape and phileo. And agape is that there's a lot to, the Bible, the New Testament does a lot unpacking agape love, the selfless love. Like in shorthand terms, the quick definition is it's love. That's what, like, the epitome of love. But phileo is more of affection, to have affection for. And it might sound like we're splitting hairs, but I think I think there might be something there to kind of unpack. I don't know if y'all have looked into that more, but to love, phileo is to love, have affection for, be fond of. So it's fascinating that it's described 2 different ways there by John. I wish I knew what it was in Aramaic. Maybe you do, Taylor, Mr. Old Testament.
No. I don't know about all that. I'm looking now. You're right to point that out. I'm looking at it now. In the Greek, there is that difference in agape and phileo, love, that is used. Both of those words appear, and it's the 3rd time where it shifts.
Okay. So I was wrong on both accounts.
No.
So it's agape, then phileo.
I believe that's what I'm seeing here. Yeah.
I think the second part of this story that's interesting to me is Jesus doesn't just ask, do you love me? He ends it by saying, tend my sheep, like take care of my lamb. And so it's almost like, you're forgiven. Now also go spread my gospel. Like a call to action for us to not be weighed down by our shame or our sin, and kind of recognize like what God has done for us, and to not stop, being on mission.
Amen.
Yeah.
Preach it. That's beautiful.
A little bit after those verses, in verse 19, he says, follow me.
Yeah.
Which, I think like that, what you were saying earlier, Sabrina, about, and you mentioned too, the cutting of Malchus's ear by Peter.
In the garden.
In the Garden of Gethsemane. He has this like really intense, passionate desire to defend and defend Jesus, prove himself as being worthy of discipleship, being chosen by God, called out by God. But yeah, like what you're describing, like it's not just obviously the love is key, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, he's repeating that, but it is also that call to action, being on mission for God. I love that too.
A call to action in maybe a different way than Peter realized. Like when in the garden,
right?
His call to action is to physically protect Jesus. And then here, Jesus is kind of directing him in that action. Like it's not necessarily drawing a sword and physically, but instead leading. Right, shifting that focus of action.
Yeah, and like in that moment in the garden, we're going into it. In that moment in the garden when Peter, James, and John were brought into the inner space, Jesus is praying to his Father and gives those three disciples very simple instructions. Just like, keep watch and pray.
Yeah.
He doesn't tell them, pull out your sword and chop a guy's ear off. Like, right? Love you, Peter. But
maybe in the Aramaic he said that.
that wasn't the call to action here. And I
That's a great point.
yeah. And like, it reminds me that like our answer is so often that we should be just praying more.
Right.
We should be watchful and prayerful. And
Yeah.
God doesn't need us to defend his character in the way that we often think we have to pull a sword out and defend it.
Yeah.
He kind of, I think he's showing us that, right? And he knows, right? Like he knows in that moment. He's like, Peter, you couldn't stay up for 1 hour in prayer. You fell asleep. I asked you to do one thing, and it was to pray for an hour. And instead, you fall asleep and you turn, you're turning to violence. Like, and it shows us like that we are all so capable of, in our ego, forgetting what Christ is actually calling us to do.
Well, and
Go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I also love in that moment, though, Jesus extends a little bit of grace to them because he says the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Like he acknowledges,
Yes.
I know you want to, but I
Yeah.
also know you're human.
Yeah.
And I think that he was acknowledging they still don't get it.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was exactly what I was going to say too.
That's a really good point. It's also like considering the entire context of that story. Like if we're focusing in on Simon Peter, Jesus calls him out despite James and John being in that garden and falling asleep as well.
Yeah.
But he's calling out Peter, and it makes me think like he knows, like Jesus knows what Peter is about to do that same night, which is to deny him 3 times.
Right. Yeah.
And then, when he's resurrected, he asks specifically for Peter. And Sid has said this, Taylor's granddad, it's like he knows that Peter would have been hurting. So that's why he's like, let me see, like bring me my disciple. So I love that despite Peter denying him 3 times, Jesus just like appears to be hurting with him. Like, oh, you're hurting. I know that you're hurting. Like, let me offer you some grace. It's good.
For people who are art minded, I pulled up this image. This is obviously not a video,
Hold it up so everyone can see.
but it is.
I'll describe it for our visually challenged folks.
Yeah. So there's this painting. It is and it goes off of what Sabrina and Lacey and Ben and I are talking about in this story of John chapter 21, post resurrection. It kind of ties it all together. There's this painting. It's in the Musée d'Orsay, which is a famous art museum in Paris. And it's by Eugene Bernand. And he was a late 1800s era Swiss artist. And he has this painting, and the title's a little lengthy, but it's the disciples, Peter and John, running to the sepulcher on the morning of resurrection.
Mm.
If you're a fan of visual art, this might be a painting that you would enjoy looking up. Just this little shout out. It's got just like this detailed image of John and Peter on the morning of the resurrection running to the tomb. And it kind of captures like what their faces might have looked like.
Mm.
And it's just beautiful. It's like just this really amazing painting. If you ever have the chance to see it in person, highly
I'm more of an
recommend.
interpretive dance type of art, but no,
But yeah,
wow, that
I like to like imagine like
looks like new or AI. That's very good.
yeah, like what would it be like to be Peter?
It could
in
be a
that
tracing.
moment?
Well, with that art, that piece of art that Taylor is talking about, if you zoom in on Peter's face, you can just see the pain and like the almost like, I don't know, how would you describe it, Taylor? Like his face.
Like what you said. I mean, he's
Amazed.
He's in so much pain.
Mm-hmm. for what he did. Yeah.
Right. And like I can imagine, like, it would have been, he needed, like Lacey said, like, his spirit was willing, and yet his flesh was unable to follow through on what he desired. And we've all been in that moment.
Yeah.
Well, and when Jesus predicted, when he said, "You will deny me," and Peter's like, "No, I never will." And I think that he fully believed.
Oh yeah,
I never would.
Like
100%.
And
I've been there. I can attest to that feeling too, where you feel like I will never do that, and then fall right into it. It's so much easier than we may realize.
Absolutely.
Going back to the point that you were also making earlier about, and the when Jesus says, my flesh is willing, my spirit's willing, but my flesh is weak, that kind of thing. And I feel like there's another layer to it. It's like there's nothing new under the sun, right? And it's like all this is relatable. Obviously, we can feel it, but we see how often do we see it? It's in our culture today, where it's like we miss the forest for the trees. Where Jesus is basically he's like you were saying, Taylor. He's saying, I need you to pray with me. I need you to be here in spirit. And Peter's more focused on the physical nature of protecting and loving Jesus. And we see that today. One thing too, we haven't really talked about yet. This show is these discussions is, I want us to be able to kind of branch out and talk. Like when you're at church, you hear like we don't talk about politics. There's certain things you don't talk about or whatever. But I want us to be able to kind of go there a little bit in these discussions. And it's like I can definitely see that in our political culture of how many people feel so quote unquote spiritually convicted to physically act, where it's like that's not necessarily. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are times and situations for it, but it's like we seem to be so quick to physically act that we need to stop and maybe just check ourselves on how are we acting spiritually. Are we praying with Jesus when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane? So powerful when you see the Son of Man, prostrate, pleading with God, and all alone because his apostles just don't get it, because we don't get it. There's so much to be gained from that, but there's so much a personal spiritual level that we need to consider first before we draw that sword and chop off the ear.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Lacey's story.
Sabrina's dying to know.
Okay. So I have two, but I'm going to make it fast. My first one is the Christmas Story. Shocker. I've always been, big Christmas fan. I'm totally like, Buddy the Elf, like all things Christmas all the time. If my husband would let me, I would leave the tree up all the time. I love it. But
Squirrel.
Trees attract squirrels.
As a mom now, I really see through Mary's eyes. And one thing that I didn't really think about until I became a mom is like Mary was all alone in that stable, where, anybody else in that culture would have had an army around them, but she was all alone. But I think that was a gift because Jesus's entire life was so public, and his walk was so public. His ministry was so public. He constantly had multitudes around him, and then his death was so public. And so I really think that God said, you know what, I'm going to give you just this minute to be a mom. And I love to think about that. But the other story that I have just fallen in love with since becoming a mom is Hannah's story, and how she wanted a child so bad. And it said that the Lord had closed her womb, and it shows her just desperately praying. and she is so desperate for a child that she tells the Lord, if you give me a son, I'll give him right back to you. And it's not a foxhole prayer. Like it is, she truly meant it. And she was faithful in that promise. When the Lord did bless her with Samuel, she took him back and she gave him to the Lord. And when you think about all the things that Samuel did, from anointing Saul and anointing David and ministering to both the first kings of Israel and doing all of this, and it was all because a mom prayed.
Yeah. Oh,
And-
I love that.
Conway Twitty has a song about that.
So
Who prayed for me when mom was gone?
but I also love, okay, hang on. When she's praying, she says, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maidservant and remember me, and not forget your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a male child, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life. And then, sorry,
You could,
when Samuel is born, she says, my heart rejoices in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. I smile at my enemies because I rejoice in your salvation. And that is just so amazing. But then the coolest part of the entire story to me
but wait, there's more.
is she's blessed with more kids.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and it was just because she was so faithful in that promise, the Lord continued to bless her over and over again.
I love it. I also think that like it hits on a theme that we've been talking about, which is the power of prayer. I've never considered it that way. Like think about all of the ways that God used Samuel to, well, really to point back to Jesus through Saul and David. And it's all because of a woman praying. I love that.
Mhm.
That gave me goosebumps.
Or as Robbie Livingston would say, God bumps. Shout out.
Oh, Robbie.
Had to throw it out there.
Oh,
We don't have enough time on
Robbie.
this episode to talk about Robbie.
We love you, Robbie.
Well, we know you, Robbie. I do love Robbie. I love giving him a hard time. So I think I underestimated how emotional recalling these stories are. I mean, it only makes sense. We're going to pick those stories that make us feel. But the ladies made it through. I thought they made it through. I thought there was a couple of close calls for both of you, but you both survived and made it through your answers.
Meanwhile, the guys are
Yeah,
totally crying.
The
They're
pressure's
sobbing.
on, Taylor. I mean, I don't know, man. Now I'm nervous because the one I got, it could go bad for me. But go ahead, Taylor. Let's hear your story.
Okay.
Nobody's got the answer right, by the way. So let's see if Taylor can just play it.
I was thinking a lot about this, before this episode. I've recently been really captivated by the story of Noah in the Bible. And I just love, I love this idea that, this is going to sound crazy, but I love this idea that like, somehow if everything was supposedly lost, like if humanity, if every single person aside from a man and his family would just went totally off the rails, that God is able to be fully in control, fully sovereign, and say, yeah, we're going to redirect. This man loves me with his whole heart. His family and he and his family are going to be obedient and going to build this crazy boat and put all these animals on it, and we're gonna find a way forward. I also think it's beautiful that in Hebrew Noah's name Noach is rest. That there is this period of like rest that comes in obedience to the Lord, and that Noah's name itself points to restfulness after a long period of, I think, what biblically will be described as lawlessness,
Turmoil.
and that sometimes when we sometimes when we think about the state of the world around us, it's easy to find just despair everywhere. War, poverty, all of the things that are difficult about human reality on a mass scale. People going in different directions away from God, us doing that in our own lives. And yet, God's able to find this thread of faithfulness in the people that he calls to himself. And through the story of the Bible, we see that thread of faithfulness from beginning to end. And we find rest and hope in a future that when the olive branch comes, the rainbow is revealed, a new covenant is created. I just love that story. And there's also another thing I would point to. There's this passage in Isaiah chapter 54 where the prophet Isaiah points back to Noah and his story. And it really resonates, this passage really resonates with me on a personal level in my own life. And I love what Isaiah writes. This is 54, beginning in verse 7. The prophet Isaiah is hearing the words of God. And God says to Isaiah, "For a brief moment I abandoned you, but with great compassion I will gather you. In an outburst of anger I hid my face from you for a moment. But with everlasting favor I will have compassion on you, says the Lord your Redeemer. For this is like the days of Noah to me, when I swore that the waters of Noah would not flood the earth again. So I have sworn that I will not be angry with you nor rebuke you. For the mountains may be moved, the hills may shake. My favor will not be removed from you, nor will my covenant of peace be shaken, says the Lord who has compassion on you." Yeah, Isaiah 54, 7 through 10. I just love that sequence.
What does that mean to you, Taylor?
Yeah.
Jesus.
It does. Yeah, I mean, maybe this is jumping the gun on future episodes, but I've definitely in my own life experienced that sense of having walked in my life in a way that felt distant from God and spent a period of my life prodigal sonning it, so to speak, to use a turn of phrase. But, I felt that sense of like, where's God? I've turned my back on him. I don't feel his presence. And I've felt like in my own life, a deep resonance with this idea that now looking back, that God's love for me and his covenantal relationship that he has with his children, that it was always there. And that there is peace and rest that comes in realizing that the Lord is with us, that he may be in a moment distant and feel distant, but that he's called us according to his purposes, and that he's made covenant with us, and that we're loved by him. And that, it does, of course, point to Jesus. And there's baptism imagery and symbolism in the story of Noah. It's just a really rich, beautiful story. So I love that one.
It's like grappling with unworthiness is what it sounds like you're describing. And that's a tough one when you feel unworthy.
Yeah.
And when you fall away from God, you feel separated from him, but you have to overcome that when that unworthiness feeling comes in. Grappling with that, man, that's even when I feel close to God, I still grapple with that.
Oh yeah. And Noah, I mean, right? Like he is so to speak, the last person who is like still, God's like, I'm going to use you. And he has his own struggles with sin, drunkenness, and shame that he experiences through his failures. But I just love the story of Noah. I don't know. It's great.
Matthew did a study on Noah a couple years ago, And he was joking about, he was like, I have no idea why we think that this is a kid's story. It is not a kid's story. Literally everybody dies. Like, this is not, yes.
Yeah.
That, and so I have a little theory. Well, yeah, a little bit of a kind of a theory behind Noah too, especially because like to that point, the kids version, everybody gets on the boat, everybody's saved, and there's a rainbow, the end. But wait, there's more. The rest of the story, which is, it seems like it's thrown in there haphazardly. And it's like, why ruin such a beautiful story, with what Noah does afterward and all of that? You can't help maybe sometimes wonder, like, why is that even in there? What purpose does that serve? I have a theory for that. And if anything, to me, it shows Moses' imperfection, his humanity.
Noah's?
Did I say Noah?
You said Moses.
Did I say Moses? Yeah. Moses built the ark, right? Sorry, Noah. Yeah, so it shows Noah's imperfection, because when you read that story from the beginning to the rainbow, Noah kind of comes across as almost almost perfect. There's not a lot of imperfection there, but we know that Christ is the only one that is perfect. So at least it does kind of reinforce that. Fast forward through the New Testament, and here we are, lowly Gentiles, making sense of it. It makes sense in hindsight. So if anything, to me, it at least does show that about Noah. Now I'm second guessing.
Just for everyone's reference, it's almost 11 p.m., so it's okay, Ben.
Party.
About messing up the names.
I think, too, yeah, absolutely, the fallibility of Noah. And also in that story, I see a warning for us.
Yes.
Where in this moment of nakedness and drunken stupor, he has 3 sons. And Ham, Japheth, and Shem. Is that right?
Ham always makes me hungry.
So, point being, 2 of his sons are preserving Noah's dignity by walking in backwards, not looking at their father in this state of sin and fallenness. And one of the sons makes a mockery of his dad and takes this moment of his father's weakness and makes it almost like he's not gloating in it, but he sees his dad. They all see their father in this moment of weakness, and yet there's a way. I guess what I'm saying is, like, there's a way that we approach, or should, I think the Bible's showing us, there's a way we should approach other people's struggles.
Yeah. And
it's not, look at me gloating that I didn't do that. It's not, look at me, I am laughing at this person in their weakness. It's not, I'm somehow above them. Yeah. It should be like, when we find each other in moments of weakness or sin or fallenness, I think that the story is pointing us to this idea that, like, that's God and that person's relationship and struggle that they're in with, wrestling with their fallenness. We should be humble. We should not look at them and think I'm better than them. We should not look at them and think I would never do that.
Unless they're Auburn fans.
I think there's just a powerful lesson there to be learned in the way that we approach individuals who are struggling. And God sees it in his sons, and this story kind of flows from there in terms of, like, which of his sons are blessed and seen and by God. And
there's like a big consequence for one of his sons not showing mercy on his dad.
Right.
And making mockery of someone else's sin.
Yeah. So I think that's a powerful point.
And it echoes Peter a little bit, because even Noah, you think Noah obeyed God, built this crazy boat, to quote Taylor.
That's right.
Crazy boat. He saw the whole earth flooded, and he still fell. He still fell, was tempted and fell away. Peter was so convicted and determined, and he still missed the mark. He still didn't quite fully understood. Now, and going back to Sabrina's story, like after Jesus asks him 3 times, and then that he gets that redemption kind of arc in that story. I think he comes to realize, so there's good to be gained from that, falling short, missing the mark. That was a good one. That's a good one.
Well, that's all the time that we have tonight, folks. Tune in. I'm just kidding.
Well, the pressure's on. Plus, I got the hint. Sabrina reminded me what time it is, so I'm going to make this quick.
Realize that's what it sounded like, but I was trying to stick up for you for saying
message
business.
received.
No. I'll talk about all night.
One other thing I would say.
No, your time's up. Sorry.
So that moment where it's Genesis 9, where Ham sees his father's nakedness, drunkenness. It says, when Noah awoke from his wine, he knew what his youngest son had done to him. So he said, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants. He shall be to his brothers." And he goes on to say, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. May God enlarge Japheth. So, it shows how I think also relationships in families can be really torn. And not just in families, but like among friends, among people that we're doing community with, can be torn when we approach each other in those moments of weakness in a way that's gloating or prideful or better than. Yeah, just to tie it back in, I just wanted to read that verse a little bit where 2 of them walk backwards and cover their father's nakedness, and the other doesn't. Well, this is powerful.
And the gloating thing that you're talking about, the better than thou kind of attitude is, man, that's a tough one too, because a lot of times, and I'm talking about myself here, is like I'm doing it and not realizing it. It's so easy to see it in other people. It's so hard to see when you're doing it yourself and being honest with yourself to do anything about it.
Well, what about you, Ben? What's your story that you want to?
Jesus.
Jeez.
No. So it was kind of close. It was close. Sabrina's. It was very close. Garden of Gethsemane is a big one for me. It means so much to me. We already kind of covered that one. So I'm going to go with Moses, who built the real ark. So Moses' story, to me, contains one of the most beautiful moments in the Bible to me. Man, the pressure's going to be on now because you didn't break. I'm usually pretty good with this one. I think I can get through it.
Okay.
So, Moses' story is so, he lived 120 years. And when you try to read his story front to back, it almost takes it feels like 120 years. So much of his life is documented. So when you go through his story, you really start to feel it, from his birth to, and being put in the ark. Isn't it the same word? Ark?
Oh, you're talking about
the Hebrew word?
Yes, it is the same word. Yes.
Who's laughing now, ladies?
He's in the river, in the Nile.
Yeah, I think I want that one. Anyway, so you're there at his very hectic birth in that everything going on, growing up in this royal family as a foreigner, and then running for his life, being exiled, and then God appears to him. He comes back. He leads the Israelites out of Egypt. And that whole process from leaving Egypt into the wilderness, man, it goes on, and it's just turmoil after turmoil, to one point where his father-in-law, Jethro, comes to him and is like, these people are killing you. You need to put people in place to help you. And it's like, I feel that. I almost feel relief that Jethro is finally coming to him and offering him help and suggestions. So, when you're reading it, it's like you really start to feel that just exhaustion. And then all the way to the Deuteronomy chapter 34, it's 12 verses, but it's one of the most beautiful moments when read in context. When you've gone through this whole 120 years with Moses, all the way. It starts in Genesis, right? Well, he starts in Exodus. Right. Okay. Yeah. His story starts Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Here we are, chapter 34, the final day of Moses. Man, I get Moses and Noah mixed up so much now. So the final day of Moses, not a whole lot there, but when you read it in context, you've been with Moses this whole time. One thing I skipped to is he doesn't get to go into the promised land because he disobeyed God, and instead he is taken up on the mountain. I believe it's Sinai, right? Is it Sinai? I know they call it Moab. Was it land of Moab? Mount Nebo. Sorry, to the top of Pisgah. But here you are on the mountain. So he's led them out of Egypt, gone through all the wilderness, the falling short, the idols, and now he's delivered the people into the promised land, but he doesn't get to go in. Instead, he's on the mountaintop with God. God has been there through this whole story the whole time, leading him, pushing him, guiding him, even to the point that Moses, I think we mentioned in the last episode where it's one of those very difficult moments in Scripture where Moses reminds God not to destroy the people and start over with Moses. So there's this close kinship relationship between him and God. And there they are at the mountain, sitting on top of the mountain after this 120 years, this long life, walking together. And it's like I said, it's a short chapter, not a whole lot's given. There's one dialogue given by God to Moses. Then the Lord, starting verse 4, then the Lord said to him, "This is the land which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I have let you see it with your eyes, but you will not go over there." That's really the only dialogue we get. But I cannot help, again, this is extra contextual, I can't help but just think about two old friends sitting there together. Not just friends. I feel like friends degrades it a little bit. There's so much reverence with God. But God's been there watching over Moses, guiding Moses, and part of me wants to think they're sharing some jokes. Like, hey, remember that time when you
when you hit that rock?
When you hit the rock, that was hilarious.
Shouldn't have done that.
What'd I tell you? And what? Cause I can't help but think back. My grandfather, both my grandfathers, but my dad's dad in particular, he was my last grandparent to pass away. Just 7 years ago now. But he was so close and such a big part of our whole family. He was the patriarch, and we had a relationship where I know he loved me. I loved him. I hope he knows how much I loved him. I love him to the point that I can still hear his voice in my head. He resonates so much. But we had this kind of, he'll pick on me, he'll tease me. Hey, he'll never let me forget kind of thing. Like, hey, remember yeah, I remember. But I can't help but kind of imagine or kind of transpose that relationship to this one with Moses and God of, hey, remember when you hit that rock? Wasn't that a good idea?
Well, remember when you walked across dry land, like when I parted the sea?
Yeah.
Like, remember those plagues?
Remember the look on those guys' faces? Yeah, that was hilarious. I know this is all extra contextual, but it's just like that relationship, it's just, and if you ask me, Moses got the better end of the deal. I'm not advocating disobedience, but if I had to choose between going into the promised land with those people, after everything we've read about them complaining about this and that, we want quail, or we're sick of manna, give us quail, and we're sick of quail, I say these people in general, you still see that same mindset today everywhere. But it's like, I would much rather sit there at the top of the mountain with God, looking back on my life and on just reflecting as old friends.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that.
And we see it too. We see it. You can see it in every congregation. Ours especially. We've got older men going back to prayer, like Sabrina talked about. Billy Tolson is one that comes up a lot whenever he gets to pray. I feel like we're witnessing that mountaintop moment every time. An old relationship. I feel like Billy Tolson, of anybody I know, he's one that could sit there and joke around with God over all of the shortcomings. Remember when I screwed up? Yeah, I remember that. Like they had that kind of. I get that feeling when I hear him pray, and
for sure.
I wonder sometimes in the Moses discussion. I've wondered about Psalm 90, and which is Moses' prayer, like when he prayed that prayer, and I think the Bible doesn't say, but I wonder if it was
about that same time,
around that time, right? It seems like
he does have the Song of Moses, I think, is opened up, but that's from the Israelites, right? That's how Joshua opens, I think.
This is Psalm 90. To my knowledge, it's the only psalm attributed to Moses. But there's this moment where he literally says, in this psalm, he says, "As for the days of our lives, they contain 70 years, or if due to strength, 80 years. Yet their pride is only trouble and tragedy."
That was just our dog. I apologize. Go ahead.
Their pride is only trouble and tragedy, for it passes quickly and we disappear. That's Psalm 90, verse 10. And he's describing a long life being 70 or 80 years. And in this moment that you're pointing to here in Deuteronomy, he's 120, right? Yeah. Like God has blessed him in these amazing ways with this really long life, this leadership role, this relationship that's so deep, and his, like you said, spanned multiple books of the Bible. This is just paragon of faith and leadership and faithfulness in spite of his shortcomings. And I've often thought, like, where was Moses when he prayed that prayer? Maybe it was, right around when he was about to be reunited with God forever at the end of his life. I don't know. It doesn't say, but I love that psalm, and that's a great story.
Speaking even more to that relationship between Moses and God, it's that chapter continues on. That after that dialogue from God, it sums it up. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab in accordance with the word of the Lord. And this is so. There's a lot of theory and interesting discussion over this, but something that we often forget is that, God, buried Moses in the valley of the land of Moab. Like God buried him himself. Now I get there's a lot of theory there as far as God's hiding the body. I've heard theories like because he didn't want the body to be, I don't know, abused or misused or whatever. But just the thought of God burying himself shows we see the rise and fall over and over again by Moses at being a man, but we also get a glimpse into God's love for Moses right there, even deeper. And
I think that's a theme that we're seeing in all these stories which we've picked out, right? I mean, starting with the story of Peter, Jesus,
Hannah.
Right. The story of Hannah, faithfulness, and like that love and mercy that he's showing.
Yeah.
Like to Noah, of course, making that covenant, to Moses. There's just like such a beautiful theme of like how we've all picked out stories where
I was about to say that. Yeah.
Where God is like showing us, even though the ending that we, quote unquote, we see in our lifetime may not be what we expected, it may be even better, or like more gracious or more incredible than in whatever we could have imagined. Peter didn't think he was like, I'm never gonna betray you, and yet, or like Hannah didn't think that she would see herself to be blessed with children, and yet Noah's thinking, really, like, can I actually build this crazy boat? And
crazy boat.
I don't know, it's just It's just
No, I was thinking the same thing. It's because we didn't go over our answers before this. Like we're hearing them for the first time now, and none of us chose the same one. I Gethsemane's a big one, but I had planned to go with Moses anyway. But so we came close there. But we all picked different stories. But I think that in itself says a lot about the Bible, that we each have a different like pivotal story of the Bible that's different and means something. But you're right; they all kind of point the same way, and they all have very similar, stories, motivations to them.
Yeah, I feel like God is surprising his people with how good and faithful he is constantly.
Yeah.
That's true.
But who got it right? You tell us. Send us a message. goat.bear.lobster@gmail.com or just message us. Which story did you like, or did you have a different one? As we wrap this up, again, I get the hint, Sabrina. I'm wrapping it up.
I promise that wasn't my intent.
That seems to be my go-to button for this episode. We're gonna start wrapping it up, but quickly kind of go over some any lingering questions that you have that you want to explore in future episodes. And that's another thing about a lot of this is going to be candid, kind of like tonight. We kind of came in and just gave our answers. Some of this is going to be candid as far as I don't know. Like I have this question, I'm not sure about it. Let's talk about it. So, any lingering questions, anything about the Bible that you've always kind of been curious about?
Dinosaurs.
That's a good one. It's a very good one.
Dino episode.
Did Jesus ride a raptor, or was it Stegosaurus? I've seen different depictions.
But I really want to. There's a lot of questions that I have, but discerning God's will and his purpose, I want to dive deep into that, but also why do I believe what I believe? Like, I know that God is good, but if you came up to me and asked me, like, would I be able to give you an answer? And, why I believe that he is good. And also, I want to talk about like the practical, tangible sides of Christianity and our beliefs. And I feel like Matthew has done a really great job with when like he doesn't just give a sermon, he gives like step by step try to focus on this week.
By the way, Matthew, our preacher, I know we've mentioned it a few times. I just double down on that one.
But there are some things that like do everything with love. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And so there just questions like that's good. I would love to dive deeper into.
We were talking about this question. I would say prayer practices. I think that for me personally, this last year, I, influenced by Taylor, have really like dived deeper into prayer, and sometimes my prayer looks different depending on the day. Sometimes it's reciting Psalms when I feel like praying feels like a lot of effort. So I'd love to hear everyone's prayer practice. I think that is just like a really good practical, thing to discuss with our faith.
By the way, to that topic, my brother, I think I mentioned it last episode, my brother did his church, the congregation he worships with up in North Alabama. He, for the youth group or something like that, he put together a podcast called Gather Around Tabletop. So if you want to look that up, and it was all about, and he did interviews with different people. He interviewed Lacey, interviewed me, interviewed my nieces, which was really cool to hear each one of their takes on, what does prayer mean to you and all of that. That's a good one to look up too. He was a big inspiration as to kind of the idea of, hey, that's a great idea to kind of bring in a podcast to this type of discussion. So, but yeah, I think he did like 10, 11, 12 episodes on prayer, and I feel like there's still so much left to talk about, and that's a great one.
Yeah, I love that too. We were listening to a man in a video recently at this alpha class that we've been hosting.
Yeah.
At our church at Palo Alto. And in the video, he said that he is convicted that the most important thing we do in this life is pray. And that really hit home with me. I'm not always the most diligent at prayer, I feel like, but I like that idea as a topic.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about, this is maybe like hyper specific, but I kind of would love at some point to do an episode on Ephesians. I have been like really struck by Ephesians. To bring it back full circle to the beginning of this episode, my grandmother Betty, her favorite passage of the Bible is in Ephesians chapter 3. It's just such a great book, and I think like maybe that being a model for like at some points down the road, lingering, just like do a bit of a deep dive into like a book or even a chapter, kind of like focused on.
Do y'all want to do
Philippians,
Romans?
Whatever it may be.
Do y'all want to do Romans?
Romans. Oh my goodness.
Y'all just got done with a 4 weeks study on the first 8 chapters, right, of Romans. And I could tell you guys put a lot of work into that.
We really loved it. It was really helpful for both of us, I think.
Yeah, very powerful book. But yeah, that idea of like maybe doing some like scriptural deep dives.
Something other than Romans is what I'm hearing you say.
We're down to do Romans. There's still so much to learn.
Ephesians, there's some very important things in Ephesians.
Oh yeah.
And we can definitely we'll do a series like that, dissecting Ephesians and whatever other books I want to talk about.
Yeah.
No, that's all great stuff. One thing I do want to kind of get into at some point is, and Taylor, you and I have kind of discussed this a little bit, and I want to try to because I don't want to like overgeneralize and over speculate or anything like that. But I'm sure maybe some of you that are listening have heard or seen videos popping up on social media of certain preachers or Bible, quote unquote, Bible scholars making some outlandish claims, specifically geared towards almost downplaying the divinity of Jesus, the life of Jesus, different things like that.
What is that? Like defending the faith kind of thing? Is that what you're describing?
I mean, we could look at it that way. I just feel like there's a rise in it. I'm seeing more and more guys and the same characters coming up again and again to becoming almost like leaders in this kind of push or whatever it is. Just this. There's some things that are being said that are very concerning, and they almost seem to. I feel a little threatened by them as far as like they're just kind of degrading some of the scriptures, and I think we should be very cautious. But I'm not like saying we need to look at them and dissect them and just point out where they're wrong. I just feel like it's probably good that we look at them and what are they saying? What are they really saying? Is it something to be scared of, or is it something we need to be alert for? Stuff like that. Not judgmental necessarily, but just I think sometimes it's important to look around and see what others are saying, and is there value to it? Is there not? And making some discernment there.
So, just one example, we saw a video of a preacher who did a whole sermon about Jesus was sinful and that's why he got baptized.
Yeah,
it's like no, that and we've seen a couple of videos where preachers have made statements where it kind of makes you think, but when they make a claim like that even Jesus sinned, it's like no. And so that's one of the examples that
when it goes to the
about.
Right, when they make claims like that goes straight to the character of Christ
Hmm.
on earth. I think that's where I really get alert. Then there's other videos, like I kind of mentioned earlier, fun, almost, well, I'll say fun. Some of them where it's like theories of speculations on why did God bury Moses? Was it to do this and whatever, and other theories about Noah's Ark, all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's some more fun way approaches, topics like that we can also cover. But I think I just can't help but feel there's something going on, because it just seems to me to be on the rise, kind of like Lacey was just talking about, more of that. And I'm not saying it's a certain group or whatever, but and I'm not going to try to sit here and say this is what they're saying. I say, we look at the videos, we listen for ourselves. What are they saying? And let's discuss it. And
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind again is just internally, what do I do with that when I experience those moments? Just
right.
as an aside to what you're describing,
yeah,
and considering that as a future episode topic, you don't have to pull the sword.
right, exactly.
I always feel that struggle too of when someone says something that's clearly unbiblical, contradicts other parts of Scripture, Jesus' sinlessness being an example, the virginity of Mary, these core truths, almost like Nicene Creed level, deep truths that, quote unquote, the Christian orthodoxy as described, and just well, here are the core tenets of the faith that have been agreed upon. When we feel that people are attacking those core truths from the outside, I guess my first thing is internally, what is my response?
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be the sword. It should be, I got to pray for those people really hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got to pray for myself that I hear and discern the voices that are true, and I have to act out in the world in a way that Jesus would act.
Absolutely.
I found myself in a moment of sword pulling, so to speak, this last fall, where I was around a group of people. Those people were disparaging the Lord in a very surprising way.
Yeah.
People that I know and care about, and I love them to death.
Yeah.
But I found myself being angry and upset and verbally being getting literally angry with them and being don't, how dare you speak that way? But that's not the right response. That's pulling the sword. I should have said in that moment, Lord, please have mercy on them. Please have mercy on me. Please help me to approach them in a way that shows them your character. And that's not cutting Malchus's ear off. It's not cursing at someone who's cursing the Lord. It's saying, I will get down and wash their feet. If that's what I need to do, I show them the mercy of the Lord as he's shown it to me, because I've been in that exact same position that they're in.
Right.
Blaspheming the Lord's name, doing things that are not Christ-like, taking biblical truths and distorting them. We're all capable of doing that. We all have blind spots, and it's a little different when you're talking about people in positions of power with social media accounts, projecting things that are unbiblical. But
it's easy too when you're looking at just a few seconds of a clip.
Right.
And that's another thing is I don't want to misrepresent people by just looking at this 4 seconds of a 40-minute talk. But no, that's the best way to put it. And that was one thing I wanted to be clear. I'm not looking to make a judgment on those people. I'm looking to see, let's see what they're saying, because it does feel challenging, like you're talking about. And let's navigate it. And how do we navigate it in a way like Christ, to be more like Christ, but also with our own flawed understanding. But you bring up two key things, and it points to Sabrina's topic about prayer. That to me is a big thing about prayer is praying for those people you disagree with, those people you talk about drawing the sword. I'm very guilty of, I try so hard not to draw the sword, but when someone else draws the sword, I was so quick to draw mine. I'll react really quick.
And we should remember too that in that story, when the guards approach Jesus to arrest him in the moment before the kiss of Judas, when Jesus speaks for the first time and says, "It's me. I'm the one you're looking for."
Yeah.
The guards are astonished and fall back. They are overwhelmed by his presence. And when we show other people that we're walking in the Lord's presence, that he walks with us, that his Holy Spirit moves through us into the world around us, that when we shine that light, we don't have to really ultimately worry about the reaction of the person on the other end, because one, we know the Lord loves them and desires them to repent and know him.
Yeah.
And two, we know that he, in his love and his mercy, will be in control and sovereign over whatever our fallible, small perception is, that he's in control of it.
Right.
And, even in that moment where he's about to be kissed on the cheek, he's in control.
Ladies, your job is to pull us back when we get going. But
That'd be a great conversation topic.
Stop.
Absolutely.
You're out of control.
Don't worry, your message is received. We're wrapping this up. Just 4 more questions.
No way.
Oh my goodness.
We're losing Sabrina, guys.
No, that's not true.
Losing your wife.
Okay. That's even worse. I'm losing my wife.
That's right. Get him, Lacey.
Well, what a phenomenal conversation, especially hearing y'all's favorite stories. I think that speaks and says a lot about you guys individually. And I just appreciate you sharing it. And I didn't break. My wife was betting on it, but I didn't. Again, guys, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. If you have any questions, concerns, you want to send us any kind of topics to discuss, you can message us or send us email at goat.bear.lobster@gmail.com. Until next time, guys, thanks for joining us.